Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elena Lotrean. I'm the ambassador of Finland to Romania and the Republic of Moldova. Thank you very much for coming to this event. This is part of the Nordic Festival. Just a few words. You know that education is a thing that's very close to our hearts. And I know it's very close to yours since you are here. The subject of today's panel is critical thinking in schools. And I'm sure you all agree with me looking at the world today, just looking at the news today, that what you need to have is you need to have critical thinking. You need to think about the sources, what kind of ideas they have behind in what they tell you. And by the way, I did learn a new thing just yesterday, that not just need to be media literate, we need to be feed literate, which means that we need to have feed literacy. It means that we can understand what's in the social media feeds, what are the sources, and who is behind, and what is behind each and everything. So a very topical issue indeed for today. And without further ado, I will give over this microphone to my good friend Elena, who happens to be also one of our honorary consuls in Romania. And she's a very good example of a person who is very much into this very important topic. So Elena, please, you take over and introduce our wonderful guests.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lena. Dear guests, present, former and future ministers and teachers and people who think. I am Elena Lotrean. As Lena mentioned, I am one of the honorary consuls of Finland in Sibiu, and also the founder of the Romanian Finnish school ERI and the Finnish Teacher Training Centre, which is a training center designed for, of course, teachers and how things are moving in our world. Worlds in plural, because we have different worlds. And today you are in the world of critical thinking in schools at the point place, and we want to make a point at the point together with my colleagues, because critical thinking depends on the points of view and can only be done when there's a point of reference. Our 2 points of reference today are 2 of my very good friends and mentors with whom we worked really hard in making education closer to the teachers and the students. One of them is Ari Pokka from Finland. He's a philosophy teacher, high school teacher, and also was for very many years principal in the biggest school in Finland, and also the president of the Association of Principals in Finland, from whom I learned quite a lot to think, not only critically, but also to think, which is very interesting to see how different cultures have different thinking patterns. Our second point of reference today is Sorin Costreie, professor doctor in philosophy at the university this time. He was a pro-rector of the University of Bucharest and has many titles, and is very well known for his work in not only the academic world, but also in the society. And today we are going to have fun together. This is what we decided, because critical thinking should be fun. It's not something that you study very hard and sit there and try to figure out the world, but to let the world unfold to ourselves and bring us as many information and as many ways of thinking that make us enjoy life. I will pass just a little bit so you know how this debate is going to happen, because it's going to be a debate, and there are going to be questions also from yourselves. And whenever you have a question, please have the patience to get a microphone, because we are recording this meeting, and if you ask without having a microphone, we're missing the question on the recording, so my colleagues will bring you the mic. Besides those questions, we can start with what is critical thinking and how you implement it. So I will pass the floor to Sorin, who will tell us briefly what is critical thinking, and then move on to how we implement and how we see it.
So thank you, Elena. Welcome, everybody. We design the things in this way. I will provide you for roughly 50 minutes some food for thought. And after that, namely venturing to give you 3 meanings of critical thinking. And after that, we'll see how or even whether we can implement it into the schools, because the specialist is there. So I am, in a sense, more theoretical, and Ari will be more practical. So the presentation is structured in the following way. What is not, we in philosophy, we start first when we like to define something, what is not this something. So the first thing would be what is not critical thinking. Afterwards, what is critical thinking? And how do we come to think critically? Let's get to the point. So what is not critical thinking? In a sense, everybody should have a rough idea about that since you are here, right? Well, what I can tell you is not formal logic. It's associated with logic, but is not formal logic. Formal logic is like mathematics, is something very strict and abstract, whereas critical thinking is not. However, we may say that it's a kind of implemented logic in our daily life. It's not philosophy. So it's related to philosophy, but it's not philosophy. Why? Well, if you are studying philosophy, most probably you'll get the virus of the critical thinking, but not necessary. So you can be exposed to philosophy, you can do philosophy without being a critical thinker. So it's not automatic connection between the two. Yes, the most academic domain welcoming critical thinking is philosophy, but there are others as well. And it's not science. That's another trap. I mean, most scientists think that since they are doing science, they are thinking critically by default. That's not true. It's scientific, is in a sense science, but if you are doing science, like in the case of philosophy, not necessarily you are thinking critically. And now the paradox. But in a sense, critical thinking is a bit of all of this. But what I would like to present is that if you are doing formal logic or philosophy or science, that doesn't mean automatically you are going to think critically. Okay, now what is critical thinking, right? The first meaning is that it's an academic discipline. And like in all academic disciplines, you will have courses, textbooks, professional associations, conferences, so on and so forth. These are 4 of my books. A general introduction into, not mine in the sense that I wrote it, I'm using as a teacher. General introduction into critical thinking, because here we may have this distinction, which I think it's important. You may have general introduction, like a general exposure to critical thinking, or here I brought 2 examples of critical thinking connected to legal thinking, so for lawyers, critical thinking for medical thinking, or even better said, for clinical thinking, clinical critical thinking for managerial and economic thinking. So you may have either general introduction into critical thinking or specific to some particular domains. Secondly is what all of us would like to have, right? It's a cognitive skill or ability. But what would be that? Well, that what would like to obtain when we are thinking of critical thinking in terms of the target of our mind is what which make us think rational, logical, analytical, structured, clear, articulated, so on and so forth. Is good. The European Commission put this cognitive skill in the most 10 wanted one we would like to have in the society and in our schools. The meaning I would like the most, and I think this should be the real target, and all the others should be the means in order to obtain that, it's a mental attitude. And I think that for us, for our peoples, for our societies, this is the real target we should attain. And what would be that? I mean, what would be critical thinking as a mental attitude? Here, I think we need two important traits. One is a kind of scientific skepticism. What is that? Well, it's a critical inquiry into the facts and evidence-based investigation to pursue the truth, to test hypotheses, to verify suppositions, to be logical and rational. I mean, exactly what is happening in our society today, right? To recognize your errors and mistakes, that's very hard because we are really entrapped in our errors and in our way of thinking. And critical thinking, it's thinking of thinking, is the way in which we can improve ourselves, and ourselves in this case means our thinking. So it's a kind of metacognitive level when we are thinking of our thinking such that we can improve it. Right? All of us would like to eat better, to sleep better, to be, more powerful. And we are doing exercise, we are taking diets, we are taking all kinds of things. But how often do you think, how can I think better? And you can do it. Use your brain, it's just another organ, which should be exercised. Okay. To be able to change your opinions and beliefs in the face of evidence and, or better, counter-arguments. That's the most difficult thing. But that's the core of science and logic and truth and philosophy. So whenever you will acknowledge that the different point it's better than yours, you should have the power to say yes. That's it. So in front of arguments, you should be able to change your mind. That's the most, psychologically speaking, that's the most difficult thing. You think critically when you are able to do that. And the second important aspect of critical thinking, it's intellectual humility. What really is that? Well, it's the capacity and disposition to know the boundaries of your expertise, to recognize the limits of your knowledge and epistemic competencies, the power to say no. How often in the streets, for instance, you are asking for an address and somebody will give you gibberish thing, go there, strike, go left, take a turn, and you will end nowhere. Because it's again another psychological trap that you are ashamed to say no. It's really a shame. It's in our society, and that it's working in the most powerful and destructive way for our teachers. They should be the first who would like to teach us to say no when we are asking them, do you know that? No, I don't, but let me think of it, let me search for it. Look, only God knows everything. So we should acknowledge the limits of our knowledge. Of course, is connected with that, not to venture to believe something quickly and without verifying its sources. And that's the paradigm of Socrates, Descartes, and so on and so forth. So, critical thinking as a mental attitude presupposed a logical and rational thinking based on a solid scientific skepticism and constant epistemic humility. And This leads to a more effective detection of thinking errors, fallacies, and a better awareness of cognitive inclination, biases, and help us to make correct rational decisions. So in critical thinking, we have two kinds of errors. The logical errors, called fallacies or sophisms, and the psychological errors, which are the biases of our mind. And the target of critical thinking is whenever you should take a decision, you shouldn't think about it. Because otherwise, it's a kind of automatic way of dealing with that. And we are dealing with that in the virtue of our emotions, inclinations, whatever. So the critical thing is whenever you have to think of a decision, sleep on it. That's even, you know, my grandpa used to tell me that it's the test of the night. When you have to have, not like I'm going to eat ice cream or not. You don't have to sleep with this kind of issue. But if you would like to divorce or to get married or to, I know, get a job or to quit from this job, well, sleep. Because the night, it's a reset of all our mind, and you will be renewed on the next day, and you will see better arguments and counter-arguments. And critical thinking is exactly about that. Here you have a site for most common, logical traps, logical fallacies, and it's very good because if you are clicking on that, you will get more information. For instance, black or white, this is, or called even the false dilemma, you may know it. These are traps that we are following 10 times per day, only that you are not aware. For instance, the black or white is the following thing, you know, the wife is asking the husband, where are we going to go this weekend? To my parents or to your parents? If the husband is not falling into the trap, he will say, we'll stay home and watch TV. Says the false dilemma or black and white. When you are framing something as having only two alternatives and you are not thinking outside this box, because there are so many others, like watching TV. And that's the actual address, web address. And the second one, this is for biases, a similar one. Okay, and now in 2 minutes, and I will be done, I promise to Ari. Okay, how do we come to think critically? So, okay, we have these three meanings. We have the main target, so the third meaning of critical thinking, but how can we do that? And here, critical thinking and emotional intelligence are two sides of the same coin. Because in order to think critically, you have to manage your emotions. Because otherwise you cannot think rational. And in order to think rational, you should be good in dealing with your emotions. So it's even a kind of vicious circle, but they are connected. Why? Because we are not totally rational. The most irrational thing on the world is to think that we are rational, totally rational beings. That's not true. You may know this guy. He passed over like 6 or 5 months ago, unfortunately. He won a Nobel in economy, but he's a psychologist. And basically he shows that the human mind is under the control of two competing thinking systems. Is the fast thinking, which is the instinctive, intuitive, emotional way of dealing with the world. And the second one is what we are doing now, is the slow thinking, which is deliberative, logical, rational, logical, and analytical. That's, well, in philosophy, very few things are new. Plato says something similar 2,500 years ago. And in Phaedrus, we have this allegory of the chariot, and he said, we are like this man dealing with two horses. In the story of Plato, it's winged horses, one black and one white, and one is rationality and the other is emotivity. And the whole mystery of life is to put them together, not to make them go into different direction, because you will be tear apart. When your heart is saying something and your mind is saying something contrary, well, you got a problem. That was the foundation of our contemporary world done by Descartes, because on this ontological dichotomy, he said, okay, everything in the world is either belonging to the mind or to the body. And that's the mind-body dualism. And he said we have two kinds of things, res cogitas and res extensa, so things which are extended and things which are thinking. And we are trying that was in the 17th century, to cope with that, and we are framing the whole world, including ourselves, using this general schema, which is a false dilemma. And it was Damasio, and we have this translated even in Romania, it's the Descartes' error. And he says, reason, if we are framing ourselves, our cognition in terms of either reasoning or emotion, it's a false thing. Why? Because we are, I would say, miraculous combination of the two. It's very hard to say we are totally rational or even at one point, or totally irrational or emotional. We are a fine combination of that. And this is why critical thinking is not just logic, because logic is just for pure thinking, for pure kind of, mathematical and rational combination. We are not like that. And we have to deal with that. We have to acknowledge our irrational part in order to be more rational. And that's another thing. In critical thinking, you have to have this holistic approach, because otherwise you will get the false idea, which very often happens in our mass media, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sorin. Almost all of us here are teachers, or at least interested in education, and we've been talking quite a lot about competencies. And as you know, a competency is formed out of knowledge. Thank you very much, Sorin, for the knowledge of what critical thinking is or is not, and abilities, and that we will see in the following moments. And I will keep the right attitude, because it's the third part of competency. So, Ari, please have the floor.
Bună ziua. I have been around 15 or 20 times in Romania, so I have learned 2 or 3 words, so I used 30% of my Romanian language ability just right now. So, nice to be here once again, and I was just thinking that, and maybe it would be the question for Sorin or also for you, that I somehow felt today that somehow just right now it's really difficult to be the critical thinker. I mean that the AI, the algorithms, all of that are giving us the material what we are wanting to see. So if you like to have some opposite ideas, if you like to see some critical point of view, they are much, much harder to find maybe than earlier. Okay, we have all the information somehow in our hands, but if you're always collecting material what support your former ideas, are we any more critical, or are we just repeating the same story? And I think that's the challenge not only for the students, but also we as an adult. I keep myself quite intelligent man. My wife's opinion is different, but anyway. So somehow I think that even for me, sometimes it's very, very difficult to think about it, that am I reading some fake news, or am I reading some news which are really true and honest and reliable. So when I'm looking for our students and children, I think that this is one of the things where we try to answer somehow and some ways in the Finnish education. Oh, there's an Englishman, Bernard Russell, one of those guys which name somehow coming to my mind when I was starting this kind of logic, analytic, philosophic thinking. And these are the things what I found from the Finnish curriculum. Actually, the critical thinking has been mentioned in the Finnish comprehensive school curriculum 26 times. And 75% of these mentions are about pedagogical approach, how the critical thinking should be the part of the pedagogical approach in the Finnish school. And like in Finland, we never give instructions or straight orders for teachers. We are more giving them the idea that these are the things which must be included everyday education in the school. We don't say how to do it. We say that you do it and you find suitable ways to somehow empower the students' critical thinking. And I think that you can see that the transversal competencies which are now in every school level, and especially when I look at Finnish education, where we have been quite successful is the media literature. A couple of years ago there was some kind of international assessment where the Finnish students were best to find the fake news and understand what is the fake news, what is the realistic news. And I'm quite sure that one of the reasons was that we use a lot of time to media literature, and we're giving them the different kind of things to read and analyze, and also somehow debate and discuss together. Because we also believe that this critical thinking is not only something what you can learn by yourself, but it's also very much about the collaborative thinking and also debate. I liked very much that Sorin raised the idea of this role of emotions and this kind of emotional safeness. I think it's very important when we think about the critical thinking and somehow accept it also opposite ideas, and we can discuss them together in that kind of peaceful situation in the school. Now I must look where the exit, because the next one maybe need that I must go fast out of this place, and then I just let Elena to correct the situation later on. So I have followed your ministry, your educators. I read almost every day something about the Romanian education. I follow the Ligia, I follow the current Ministry of Education. I have spent some time in the schools in Romania where parents has some words to say for the teachers. And now I say it this way, that you Romanian people are really critical one. But then when it's coming to thinking and accept the opposite ideas, I'm not sure that what is the level, because this kind of criticism without listening other people's opinion is, for us Finnish people, it sounds quite rude. I think that in Finland, if we use the same kind of language, the population will be 1 million smaller, because there has been fights all the time outside of the school or whatever place. So that's why the role of the school is so essential, because we're giving our youngsters, but our people also, the ways to handle things critically and accept and discuss openly also the opposite ideas. And I think it's one of the key elements of this kind of critical attitude. And as you see it, it's not only the languages, but it's also the mathematics, that you must have the logical mindset. You must have the analytical mindset that you can be that kind of critical thinker. These are some subject-specific things what you can find in our curriculum. Then man himself. I think this red alert is, okay, this is my political point of view. You can accept or not. We can discuss that very openly and critically and think about it, what he is saying or not saying, doing or not doing. But I think that this is one of the key elements today, that how we somehow are able to check the information, what are the fake news, what are the information what is not correct. Because if I think myself, I followed very much the fishing, sport, traveling, some other hobbies. So I all the time get the same kind of information for myself. And like I said in the beginning, it's sometimes really difficult to even myself to understand that what is really the fake news and what is something what is correct and that kind of really valuable. And that's why I think that the work what we do in the school is quite important. I think that our teachers use a lot of time to building this kind of situation where students have the possibilities to work together, collaborate together, accept their opinions, building this kind of atmosphere where debate is possible. Some months ago there was a discussion in the Finnish newspaper that nowadays in the comprehensive school, especially in the grades between 7 to 9, it's difficult to organize this kind of debates because the students' opinions are so opposite, so strong. They don't accept the others' ideas. And I think that we must also in Finland be very aware about it, that we have this kind of school where we have the possibilities, open discussion without fear that if I say something what is not, let's say, that kind of idea of the bigger group is somehow put in there on the nonsense, or people laugh you or whatever they do. So it's important that we have a lot of different kind of material. I think that when I look the teacher's job in Finland, how they work, my both daughters are primary school teachers, and how much they use their time to building the material, collecting different kind of material, different sources, different point of view, and then building that kind of 1 hour working in the classroom. They use a huge amount of their own time to making these classes interesting and somehow valuable, giving different kind of ideas possibility to grow. And we don't have decided, we don't have any that kind of contents in the Finnish curriculum like critical thinking. Critical thinking is more like this kind of undercover content what must be somehow included, everything what we are doing in the school. And I think also I was 25 years leading the high school, the last 3 grades. My teacher was teachers of the maths and science and physics and history and all of that. So when I was listening what happening there in the teacher's room between we drink the coffee, I heard a lot of this kind of things, what we can call the critical thinking, how we actually somehow support our colleagues to find new ways to thinking, new ways to building the working in the classroom, giving new kind of opinions, new information. And I think that without any that kind of special in-service training for critical thinking, we're building the community of critical thinking, what we call in Finland school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep it. Thank you very much, Ari. It is very interesting to see how critical thinking is embedded in the educational system from by the teachers, actually. And building on what Sorin said before, that the brain is an organ, after all, like any other. It's a muscle that can be trained. It is very interesting to know how do we train this muscle, because we feed it with all kinds of things, and because it's not something very visible, yeah, it's not like food. You take it and you drink it, or you eat it, or you drink it, yeah, even better. It's something that we don't see, so we never, almost, and all times, never notice how we feed our brains unless we do it on purpose. How do we actually feed that with teachers? Because, as you said, there's a lot of time spent before the class. And I always say that teachers are working too much in the class, in the classroom. They should be working outside of the classroom and let the students do the learning and the work in the class. So how do we feed the brain?
So, yeah, I understand that all the teachers cannot born in Finland, so it must somehow organize different way. I mean that we have coming through this kind of school system where the critical thinking has been part of the teacher's everyday job, not just 10 years or 15 or 20 years. It has been there in the Finnish school system so long time that, let's say that we have going through that kind of school system. But I think that the one question in the Finland is that we are not.
Is there a shortcut?
we are not anymore thinking about it that the teacher's role is somehow only deliver the content or knowledge from his or her side for the students, but more we thinking about it that how they use and how they put it practice all of this information and knowledge and emotions what coming there in the classroom. So it's much more about the using these elements and building something new, not repeat just what the teacher has said. That I think that many countries where I have visited, I still see that it's just that the good students is the one who repeat literally what the teacher said. In Finland, we never actually, or never, let's say that in the last 50 years, we don't have had that kind of idea, more about it, that make something new yourself.
Thank you very much. There is an input from Sorin as well.
Two quick answers to your questions. First, let's think of our neurobiology of our brain. Do you know when our brain, which in fact it's a network of firing neurons, reaches the highest complexity? It's not a rhetorical question.
26, 27 years
no,
old? Never,
3-4 years.
3-4 years?
Yep.
Okay.
That's the age when we are reaching the highest level of connectivity among our brain cells. If you have children or you are exposed to children, that's the age when you are coming with big questions. And they are questioning everything all the time. And also that's the age when the children will start to lie. Lying is very important. When they lie, be very happy. Because, yes, don't encourage them to lie, but be happy that they are able to lie, because it's such and very easy to say the truth, because you have to reproduce the facts. And lying, it's a very complex cognitive mechanism, because you know the truth and you are going to tell something against the truth in order to obtain something different. That means to lie. To know the truth, but to tell the opposite thing, right? What we are doing with these children, well, that's another question. And it's very important to educate them from the very beginning, because otherwise we'll lose them. So the brain at that age is like a sponge, trying to get as much information and structure. Because if we are not going to expose them to new paradigms, new languages, the brain will specialize and will double, will triple, you know, the connections they have, but we lose some kind of the connections. It's natural. It's adaptation to the medium. And so that's very important. How are we going to I like this metaphor, to spread critical thinking as a virus, the good virus of education. So follow the question. Our mind, it's following and attacking the world with questions. So the right way, and I totally agree with Ari, is not like a geography teacher. Please repeat after me. You know, the capital of Argentina is Buenos Aires. Next time I'm going to ask you about that. No. Try to come with a question. What's a capital? What's the role of capital? Where is Argentina? And please tell me, what's the capital of Argentina? What does it mean, Buenos Aires? Is really good air? And all these kind of questions, linking, you know, the specific geographical information with others. Because in knowledge, we don't have disciplines. You know, it's a famous philosopher other than Bernard Russell, Quine, who said disciplines are for deans and librarians. In knowledge and science, we have problems, we have issues, we have questions. So we don't have this kind of disciplines. And now it's a hot topic, discussing about getting out geography, history, biology, and these kind of things. And by the way, and the second response is, okay, we don't have a special discipline for critical thinking in school. That's good, because the most useful thing is to teach things in a critical way, regardless whether it's history or geography or mathematics, or so in a very question-begging way.
It sets an example.
May I say something for Sorin? I was just thinking, Sorin, that what is your imagination that what this kind of critical thinking lessons in the school look like? That we have in the timetable that, okay, 9 to 10 we have the critical thinking. Let's go there and be critical, and then we have the sports after that. So it's actually, it sounds that way also, that very mechanic, and it's not something maybe worth to do. It must be somehow included, the things what we are doing there in normal daily work.
I think from all the information that you have given us so far, I think it's very hard to be a critical thinker.
Why?
You need first to be conscious of yourself. And this is something that we very rarely teach our students, to be conscious in learning, to have this meta, the observer's position, to notice themselves learning and studying and analyzing and everything that comes with it. And sometimes we can think critically in some subjects or some areas of our lives and be completely irrational in others. And I think it's like like a game. It's like sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. How do we do it so that it doesn't seem such an effort? So that it comes easy, so that it's embedded as...
It's natural, but we have to cultivate it from the very beginning. What we are doing, we are stopping this little child to follow their questions. This is in fact what we are inhibiting them from exploring the world. It's natural, we are Homo sapiens sapiens. It's only us. Dogs and cats and whatever are also learning from the environment. That's a matter of adaptation, it's for all us. But only us, in a very natural way, we may think of our thinking. That's our power. This is why we are sapiens sapiens. And we have to feed this thing, things of your conscious, things of your way of thinking. And in that way, you will better learn everything about the world and about yourself.
Yeah, and I think that our curriculum said also that it's a lifelong learning. So it means that I have to think about it that way, that it's a exploring in the stream of the media information and everything which is related my life. And when you have this kind of lifelong interest to learn more and understand more, if school can somehow give it you that kind of sparkle, so I'm quite sure that you will be one or another way this kind of critical thinking person whole of your life, and you somehow analyze the information, even you are not maybe doing that way, that okay, now I do some critical investigation. It's much more like the way of the understanding many things.
Do you think it also depends on the culture? I mean, you have spent some years in Canada. As I remember, you have the experience of Romania and Finland and Ukraine and Azerbaijan and so on. Some time ago, I heard someone saying that if you speak or try to solve a problem in another language that you speak, you may find a different answer than in your native one. So I try to do that with French, Italian, and English that I speak, to think of a problem in that other language. And it's very funny because apparently something is a bit different, or either only the effort of doing it produces more or different outcomes, but also I think it's culturally embedded. You said the Romanians are critical, and I agree with you, and critical full stop, yeah. Whereas Finnish people would accept easier an opposite opinion. So what do you think about this cultural clash or influence?
Okay. Yeah. Another 2 points. First of all, we are critical, but not critical in the good sense. Cârcotaș. That's not good. It's the mother-in-law who is disappointed about everything. Why did I put the bottle here and not here? That's not critical thinking. It's critical. But this is, poisoning your mind in a sense. And in a very robust sense, critical thinking is exactly the opposite of this kind of dealing with the world. Critical thinking is to attack the world with a question and to be ready to answer it in many ways and to find the best way, dealing with yourself and with the others. This is why debating and arguing with yourself and with the others is crucial in critical thinking. This is why Finland have a better culture as a society, attracting and endorsing critical thinking than us. Why? Because in our society, when I'm criticizing you, most probably I will get to you as a person. And that's a rule in critical thinking: don't attack the person. I don't care about the person, the way he's dressed, how many mistresses have it, and I'm thinking of his or her thinking. I'm discussing about his or her projects and ideas. That's all. In our case, look at our mass media, look at our society. We are most of the time dealing with and criticizing the person. I don't care about the person. I care about the idea. And another very short reaction, in a sense is true, because each language is like conceptual networks thrown over the world, and you are gathering like fishes, different fishes. But in terms of critical thinking, which in a sense is like applied logic, and logic is the structure of our thinking, it doesn't matter much if you are formulating things in English or in Finnish or in Romanian. The structure, the logical structure of our thinking is the same.
The process, you mean?
No, the structure. The process is different. The structure is logical, the process is psychological.
And maybe if I think about Finland, in the Finnish context, the word debate is quite interesting, because the Finnish debate is so silent that if we think about it, our culture is a very silent culture. We are not using very much time to chit-chatting and discussing the problems. We are more about it. Maybe if I think about myself in the school, we have a lot of that kind of material where actually the storyline was that it's not wise to speak all the time. It's much more better than you just listen and be silent. And then if you have something to say, then you say it. And it's happening actually in our family life, or like you said about this example of the puddle. In the Finland, mother or wife is not saying anything about the puddle, but make you notice that you are making the mistake without any word. So the concept is totally different, and I think that maybe this kind of think by yourself, and then when you have ended some kind of good solution, maybe after that you said your words and not reacting all the time, because this reaction culture, what we're living now, for example, in the social media, it easily go that way, that all of the things are critics and all of the things are somehow that you try to somehow find that kind of very emotional things to say.
But yeah, yes and no. Here is the difference between extroverts and introverts. I mean, what's very important is the way in which you are thinking. It's like playing chess. I can play chess with somebody else, or I can play chess with myself, right? In thinking is the same. It's important that whenever you have even your internal monologue to be a kind of dialogue, right? Now if we are talking about populations, and I don't like this kind of talk because we are putting psychological labels on populations, which is scientifically a bit tricky. You are trained, and other populations are trained not to express yourself too easy. And that's good in some context and bad in other context. We are trained also to express ourselves all the time, which is good in some context and bad in other context.
So we make a good average, huh?
Yeah, together. But what is important is the settlement of your mind, your mindset. You know, the way in which you are thinking, because you can be an introvert and not to think critically, and you are just silent. You know, from outside you will look very wise, and even if you have a bird like a philosopher, but what's inside, that's it. It's a black box. So it's important, the process, and the process should be this kind of inner dialogue, and to see both sides of the coins.
Let's introduce some other black boxes in this conversation. And we have a question from the floor, or a comment.
Thank you. You got me thinking, and I think, that was the purpose of this. My name is Ligia Dec, and I want to make a quick connection between critical thinking and democracy. Because in theory, democracy does not exist without critical thinking. But critical thinking is not always democratic. And I'll start from a recent study done by the Center for Independent Journalism here in Romania, and they surveyed how upper and lower level secondary kids verify their sources, right? When they read something, how do they verify if it's right or wrong? And what they do two things. One, they look in how many places that piece of news is present. And secondly, they look at who wrote it. They try to validate the person writing it. Now, we know that with artificial intelligence and electoral years, you can find false news in very many places, and people who are seemingly legit wrote them, but they're not. So it seems that our usual way of verifying information does not work anymore. And that's something schools have to deal with. Secondly, I think besides the usual biases that we have, we also have the sort of middle ground bias, right? So you have 9 people supporting a very extreme point of view, and 1 being, reasonable. And the average of that, if we learn that, through dialogue you can reach a consensus, the consensus is not actually right, is, driven towards the extreme. And that's something we also need to teach our pupils, that you might be the only person in a room supporting something, and you might be right. Challenge your opinion, but don't get convinced if you have a majority supporting something which is false. And finally, I think we need to support our democracies more. Critical thinking is essential in that. But I fear that the way in which we're used to teaching critical thinking is somehow difficult to translate in our current democratic challenges. And we are a country very hit by that recently, and I think many others are in various ways. And perhaps we need to give teachers first, and then pupils, some instruments that they can use, because sometimes they are lost, and that's something coming from discussions with people in schools, in universities, in high schools, and that might bring me to the role of universities into critical thinking and democracies, but that's something me and Sorin can discuss over the coffee break. Thank you.
Thank you for the intervention. Any thoughts, gentlemen? I have many, but you're the philosophers.
So can you stay 2 hours, 3 hours more? No. Okay, in a few minutes. Very useful, and if we put you to think, that was the whole idea, right? To think overthinking. What we should change, and you know that we discussed and you encourage, and I think we should spread the virus in this way, is to modify the way of teaching and not necessarily to introduce into the curricula critical thinking per se. But that's very hard, because that means to change the mindset of our professors, to change habits, and it's easier to move a mountain than to change somebody's mind. And in order to do that, you have to inflict them constantly this virus, to put them in the relation with the children, into the question way of dealing with the world, and not with the repetitive and memorizing habit we currently have. And dealing with the second point, which was in fact your first point, when we have, for instance, in a community, 1 people saying the truth and 8 others saying the opposed thing. Well, that happens to the humanity many times. That's the advancement of science. In the past, most of us thought that the sun evolves around the earth, right? That was the common opinion. And only 1 or 2 or 3 out of millions thought, based on evidence and calculations and science, or proto-science at that time, that that's not true. The truth is that it's the reversing. The Earth is evolving around the sun.
So are you ready to be burned alive?
No, now I'm safe. So what I'm saying here, we need a common basis, and that's science. And that's the pursuit of truth and the anchor into rationality. And then only one man, if you have this setting, can change the mind of the others. But if we are following emotions and other biases, well, it's almost impossible. Sorry, yeah.
Before I give the floor to Ari, I just want to take up on the spread the virus thing, and I want to know the people who made the campaign of a certain candidate who managed to convince so many millions to vote to make a campaign for critical thinking.
Yeah, on TikTok.
We are fundraising now.
Yeah, I think that the Ligia's comments, I think that when we look about the Finnish way of the organizing the school, when you look the first lines of the Finnish curriculum, it's not saying anything very special about the school, but it's telling about the values of the Finnish education. What are the main values like equality, equity, well-being, safetyness, all of those things? I think that even we who work in the school as a principal and teachers, we sometimes forget it how important message that is for us. That okay, these are the things where all things what we do in the school based. And of course, we're coming to the question of the democracy, but more about this kind of safety equal situation in the daily classroom work where people have this kind of, let's say, good opportunity to have different kind of opinions, and then the teacher is keeping this kind of situation in his, or let's say in Finland, in her hands, because most of our teachers are women, like many countries. So I think it's a question, of course, very much about the teacher training, and I'm still surprised a little bit, for example, that maybe that's the one of the issue in Romania, that how the teacher training in the future answered many of the questions in your society and in the school life, because in Finland it's very practical. It's given a lot of this kind of different kind of ways to work in the daily classroom work, not only the theoretical one. And it's for example, primary school is a 5 years university where 35% or 40% is the practical things in the school. So this kind of practicing, I think, is also the part of this kind of situation, that we have the possibility to give the hands that kind of teacher who keep this situation in his or her order, and giving the space for also that one who, like in Sorin's example, I think that the Catholic Church put him in the...
Yeah, Giordano Bruno was burned. Yeah. 2 minutes, because I have a follow-up coming from what Ari have said to Ligia's question. What we have to change basically is to change the culture of our education, and that means to encourage a kind of try and error setting. Not to discourage people who are contesting you as a teacher or what you are teaching. To encourage questions and to encourage this kind of critical assessment. Without this kind of culture, you are not going to get to a critical point.
Thank you very much.
And also accept mistakes.
Yeah.
Because they are the best teacher for...
And not to punish them.
No, not to punish them. In my principal's door, there was reading, it's a great day to make the mistakes once again. And I think that it's a very important message in the school that, okay, this is something where we, not maybe the courage, but let's say that it's something where we can learn new things.
And I think the schools should be the places where we make most mistakes, because after we go clean in life, right? So we should be allowed the space where we can make these mistakes so that we have the chance to correct them. We have another question. Yeah. It costs more later, indeed.
Thank you. Can we have a little bit of benchmarking of critical thinking in motion? How about seeing how Finland and Romania perceives the Russian threat? Is it anything like a Russian threat?
Anything can be a threat, I think. Depends on where you look at it, right?
Yeah.
Which border are you on?
I first take the look of the ambassador.
Speak your mind.
Okay. I was born in the family where my uncle, my father's oldest brother, died in 1944 in the Karelian forest against the war, Soviet Union. So the family tradition, actually, the family history is somehow where we learned that it's always a threat. It's never ending threat. So let's say that my generation, who were in the school in the late 16 and the 17s, we actually somehow raised in the situation when this threats somehow go a little bit far away. It was not anymore that kind of what existing. But it has been the part of our history so strongly somewhere there in this kind of bigger story, somewhere there in our, here in the back of our head. So, yes, and now when I'm looking, for example, the Finnish news, I'm also worried about it that when I'm looking the life of my children, my grandchildren, I'm just thinking that all of these messages about the war and the possibility of the war, how it affects about their life, their decision-making, their working life, the children's mindset, all of that. So, yes, it's existing, and it's once again raised a bigger issue in Finland. Yeah, but it's let's say that mostly I'm now worried about the media climate surrounding that. Of course, the political speech has become much more aggressive. That way that we speak about it, the crisis and the situation, possibility of the war, almost every day, and it starts to affect, of course, everybody's mindset.
Okay, thank you.
The Romanian part.
The Romanian part, yeah.
Here I will deal with that not in this geopolitical way you frame it, but I will deal it in terms of thinking. The main threat I think we have in this kind of Russian way of thinking is the danger of dictatorships and ideology. And that's even more dangerous than the tanks and nuclear missiles. Somebody could throw you open, yeah, you know, because you are poisoning the mind of the others. And what we have in our society, mostly this kind of things. It's the way in which our people don't see there a danger. And they were looking back at Ceausescu saying, oh, all good times, you know. And that will prepare the return of Ceausescu in a different way. And that's the Russian, at least the current Russian way of thinking, because they are, if you think at Putin, he is the hero of this kind of guys, and he is the best example of this kind of thinking. You know, the truth is not something to be discovered, but is something which is belonging to a person, and this belonging is giving to you. And that's very dangerous.
Thank you. I will play a little bit the devil's advocate here.
You're Russian.
Yeah, I could be. Not in terms of Russians, but coming back to critical thinking and the fact that we are Homo sapiens sapiens. Why should we stay in the mind? Why is it good for us? Why should we do critical thinking when it's much easier to let ourselves be led by whatever comes to us?
Emotions.
The emotions, to be leading. Or why should we do that? Why shouldn't we live in dictatorships? Of course, one size doesn't fit all, and one solution is not for everybody. But how can we make sure that different needs are met in the societies that we have now? Because as I was opening this debate, I said that we have these worlds that we live in. And we live in so many worlds, even us as one person, we have our different little worlds. Why is it good for us? Why should we keep them? Why should we think about them? Philosophical question.
I am a very optimist philosopher in this thing, and I'm following Leibniz, who says that we are living in the best possible worlds. I know. Looking at the world with all the warriors, the crimes, the rapes, it's very hard to believe, but it's a matter of perspective. I'm not going into that because we'll need much time to elaborate, but that's problematic. And I think what most of us, we have discovered that we are not living in the same unique Romania, but we are living in little epistemic bubbles. And what we have to do is to have a kind of dialogue between these bubbles, because in a sense all of us, we are living in the same physical worlds, even though our mind is trapped sometimes in different epistemic bubbles. And that's the middle ground. And the middle ground in which you can discuss from one bubble to another is not an emotional one. You know, following the scheme I put there, emotions are good. Emotions are making us humans, but not totally humans, because the power of ourself is this sapiens, is our rationality. It's our way in which we can deal with emotions, right? And what do we have? What do we gain when we have critical thinking? Well, is what we gain when we have rationality. We have a good distance to emotions such that to enjoy them, but not to be overwhelmed by that. That's the power of rationality.
So, Sorin, I was just wondering that are these bubbles nowadays so small one that there's only one person inside in the bubble, and we are more like this kind of big bunch of the bubbles, not like that, okay, there was a family or there was some group of the people, but let's say this kind of more egoistic or individual idea that, okay, this is my bubble, and my bubble is always right. So I'm a little bit aware about it, this dialogical part of it, and when we have the huge bunch of this kind of individual bubbles, are we anymore speaking the society in the old meaning, what we have understand it, and actually coming to Ligia's one point of view, are we speaking the same kind of democracy anymore in this kind of world where everybody of us has own bubble where we are living? And my children actually were school when we opened the school that way that they have the tray of the different things what they can choose. It was like the supermarket. And I noticed from my children that how difficult for them was after a couple of years in the supermarket choose the right, let's say, soda water, because there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different tastes. And we made a little bit same in the school. And I think that it's individualized the school very much. And we think about it that it was one of the idea what we like to push through. same time keeping this kind of social interaction. But I'm not sure anymore that do we keep it that social interaction level so high, or did it be some kind of school of the one classroom where we have the 30 individuals with their own bubbles?
Speaking of the individuals, we also have some youngsters present in the audience. How can we appeal to the young generation? How can we start a dialogue? How can we make sure that we reach them in the way that they need us, in the way that it's both proper and needed? Because they're future teachers. And yeah, I'm really happy to have them here.
I personally, for instance, I have a boy. I have 3 children, and the youngest is the boy, 14. And in order to keep the relation with his mind, I'm playing the same games with him, because the games are shaping your mind. You know, and in order to have the common vocabulary, I'm trying to keep up with all these kind of games. But that's my personal solution. I don't have, you know, general solutions. And also I wonder if we can have something like that, like a general solution, because these kind of solutions are peculiar to the context. It depends from you know, the youngster you would like to relate. But I don't have a general solution. But the way, well, the general solution may be to try to think in their terms, right? As a teacher, if I want to put the information into the right fertile ground, I have to think in the way in which they think.
Do you have an answer?
Yeah, actually,
I will ask them as well.
I actually was just thinking about it, that what kind of messages we are giving for our students. I was having the lunch with my friend Mihaela before we came here, and I showed her the video where we dancing with my deputy heads. We make some rap dancing. And after that, we were in the hospital a couple of weeks because it was so heavy one. So we have the very strong belief that we don't need that kind of authority which coming to regulation and rules, but the authority coming there that you are ready to live life with your students very close, and sometimes also give them the face of the other part of you, that you are not only the teacher, you are not only the principal, but you are also the human being. And I think it's very important, and I hope that there are not very high ramp between the classroom where the teachers are standing somewhere and the students are there. I think it's very important that it's somehow equal also quite many ways.
It was very, very surprising for me when I went to teach at the pedagogical high school after I finished university. It was because it was my old school. I did the secondary there, and I knew most of the teachers, and my mother taught there before, so they thought I was visiting. And I was like, hello, entering the teacher's room. And I discovered that the world that I perceived of the teachers when I was a student there was completely different from the world that I saw when I entered the teacher's room. So my question for them to think for a while, because I will take another question, but just for you to think, is how can we not bore you to death? How can we become part of your learning, of your life, of your passion for learning and for studying, and still give you enough space to live your youth, to live your lives, and to make them in a way that you consider proper for you. So this is my question for you, and while you think, so that you don't say I'm such a mean teacher that I make you answer instantly, we have a question in the audience. So,
Hello, my name is Albertina Gheorghe. I'm not a teacher, but I've been working with the children for 25 years on non-formal education for the biggest movement of non-formal education in the world, for the Scouting. And over the years, I've noticed that the children behave completely different in another way of expressing themselves. They change differently and evolve differently in when they are not told what to do. When they know the rules, they know that they have to respect the rules, but they can also have their opinions being heard. In our, as you said, that we should listen the young generation. Actually, we should find out what the needs of the children are, because we are. We start from the idea that we, the adults, know what they want, what they need, what...
Oh, we know very well what we want them to want.
Exactly. It's not actually what they need. They need to be listened. And I think that we as adults, we should listen them.
Thank you very much.
And
big moment, yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of generations that are now adults with children of their own, and they are now, even now as adults, they recognize what this kind of education and non-formal education methods meant for them. And I think that solution for the traditional way of teaching is introducing the non-formal education methods into the system. Okay. Exchanging the perspective. Instead of having this competition for individuals, because now it's, I don't know if you, maybe
okay.
Some of
can we wrap up the question,
I will.
Thank you.
Yeah. What I want to emphasize is the fact that the competition between individuals is not good in schools. The competition between teams and collaboration between teams is the solution.
Thank you very much. This is a very good affirmation, considering that the society we live in is based on cooperation and used to be on individual doing. And that's why we had this individual competition, indeed.
So, Elena, thank you about your comment. I think that the one thing what we use quite a lot of time in our education system is that we try to listen to our students. And not only the students who are older one, but let's say that starting from the early beginning, from the primary school, because one of my favorite idea from the philosophy, what I still remember from the university, was the Aristotle, who said that the user's knowledge is always better than the maker's knowledge. So actually our students see the school totally different than we who are doing the school, because they are working there, they are following us, they are following the things what's happening there, and their point of view is different one. Okay, they are not adults, but they understand quite a lot what is the atmosphere, what is the culture, what's happening there in the daily work in the classroom. And that's why we try to also collect that information in the Finnish education quite a lot. That we don't have this gap, that we have this kind of adult professional world, and then we have this kind of students world. And there's let's say that they are not maybe to connect from each other.
I detect two fallacies. One is the false dilemma, because you said it's better to work and to compete in teams than in individuals or for individuals. Sorry, the life is not like that. is not either or. In life, sometimes we compete with other teams, being involved in our teams. Sometimes it's an individual competition. That's life. And if education is not a preparation for life, then what there is? Sorry.
I'll call in the team to compete
Yeah.
for the love of my partner. I would rather go individual there.
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know. But don't explore that.
Depends on the partner.
Yeah, and the second one, you said the children, the new children would like to be listened. Sorry, that's the story of the humankind. All the children would like to be listened, and we as parents and professors and as critical thinkers should listen to them. You cannot be critical thinking without listening to the others, because as I said, you have to be ready to change your mind. And in order to change your mind, you have to accept the claims and the arguments of the others. So, but that's the story of humankind, to listen to the children, because we are imposing on them, as Elena said, our way of thinking, and not really, listen what they want. What they want are not things. You talk about needs. They have the basic needs, plus the most common need of the children, and sometimes of us, to play. And to play, and games are the way in which we are exploring the world. And don't forget that we are zone politikon. And zone politikon means that we are in a social game. And social games means to understand the rules. This is why the games are very important, because when you are learning a game, you are playing, respecting the rules. Because if you don't respect the rules, you are not playing the game. It's simple. And this is why the games are very important, because they are preparing ourselves as social beings, as zone politikon, to quote from Aristotle.
Is there some kind of difference between genders in these games? I was just wondering that every time when I play something with my lady friends or girlfriends or later with wife, they always change the rules. Which is actually very innovative, that we as a boys, we accept the rules. Okay, this is the rule of football or playing tennis or whatever. And then suddenly you notice that, okay, these rules are not actually accepted opposite, because there's a gender difference. And now when I look at the intellectual property in our country, it's totally dominated by the young ladies and the ladies generally. So those one who actually not accepted the rules, but they made the rules by themselves.
If you play a game is a game only if you respect its rules. Now, the social game is different, because it's a kind of meta game in which somebody has the power to change the rules. But I wouldn't frame it in these terms, we and the others, we, the boys and the girls, we can discuss it, but I discover also men who are doing things like that.
But ain't that a little?
But we are gentlemen. Yeah, we have to respect.
Yeah. Ain't that a little bit like the critical thinking, that why these guys has decided that the rules are like this, and then we decided that they are not like that. We like to make their own rules. I think that somehow they think about it, the whole system, differently.
If you make your own rules, that means you are playing a different game. So you are not playing that game anymore. You are moving forward to a different game. What is important is to respect the rules, and not to change them in the middle of playing the game. That would be unfair.
At the beginning is acceptable, isn't it?
Oh.
Now, I would like to hear the young generation, and then we take the questions from the floor. We already have 3 questions.
Honestly, one way to connect with students and encourage critical thinking is the environment you make for the students. Because personally, I am more active in a teacher's classroom where they make me comfortable. They have a lot of empathy, and they encourage a subject and encourage questions. They do not criticize what will be considered dumb or less intelligent questions, like easier to understand. They understand the question and they will help you understand it with more questions. And some let you find out the answer on your own, while others give you the answers.
Thank you very much. I think the environment is extremely important also for us, and thank you for underlining that. It's something that we make, something that we create as adults, and the way of creating the environment and fostering growth is part of critical thinking. Or should we have harsh criticism as well, so that we can get used our children to, I don't know, different kind of approaches?
We have to get them used and exposed to harsh criticism. What is important is not to attack the person. That's the only rule we have to
rules,
yeah. Otherwise, we have to be to criticize project ideas and to give them a model.
Okay, thank you.
So I was wondering about the difficulty of, as you said, to think critically. And from my point of view, it comes from some experience I have from some neuroscience and some psychology. This difficulty can come from different it can have different points, yeah, so to speak. One of them can be that we need to acknowledge that we may be wrong more than we like to acknowledge. That we have biases, that we have that we're not right. That might imply some losing of control, which can be very painful emotionally. But some research suggests that when we feel the pain emotionally, then it's like physical pain. So it's really actual pain. Yeah, so it's kind of painful sometimes, it can be. But also it implies to discover maybe some trauma or some other events or some shame or some stigma, which also comes with some stress and some pain. So but it also implies to use a lot of energy and time because fast thinking doesn't usually require so much time and energy, but slow thinking does. And now when we have also to check every image or every thing that we see or we post, it's can be overwhelming and hard. And how maybe can we acknowledge that and not send people, like give them a backpack on their back and say, especially young people or any people, but also children, and pat them on the back and say, okay, you can go to explore Himalaya or whatever, which is not quite true. You need a lot of training. It's hard. Not everybody can do it. So how can we prepare them a little bit on that with gentleness, so we don't make more stress and pressure on us, and we can maybe use compassion. Thank you.
Okay.
So the question was how to prepare the children to climb on Himalaya? This is what I get. It's easy.
Yeah.
Start with a hill.
On critical thinking as a metaphor for how high the critical thinking can get, I think it can be even higher than Everest.
The sky is the limit.
Yeah, but also the Marianne's depth. So you can go both ways, you know.
I think it's because we have the Nordic week, so we must promote a little bit about the Danish delegation. So I think it's like the building the Legos, what we did it very much with our children. That you're starting with the small pieces, and then you start building a little bit bigger things. So not try to somehow, or let's say that avoid that kind of idea that it's something what you must put complete in somebody's mind. It's something what coming step by step. And every day in the classroom, every day with the different teachers, every day in the different sources, you find the small pieces. It's I think it's never complete even. So it's something what you must build all the time.
Can I say something here, playing with Lego? Because in a sense is the reverse. The smaller you are, the bigger you need the pieces. Well, not to eat them, but if when you are advancing, you are going to fine grain and little pieces. So, and that happens with this Lego metaphor in our life, because you will pay more and more attention, or we should, to the details, or to the, after you are circulating on the, highways, you will take the detour routes nearby highways. It's our way of exploring.
And now when you're coming in my age, you only see the big pieces, so you have you have to pick a perspective, so you only find that vibe which is suitable in your whole hand.
I also think it's harder for us adults to think critically, because we are exposed to much more information and we have to digest more of that. 2 more questions from the floor and 10 more minutes in total until we let you escape.
Thank you. I'm going to try to be short. My name is Silvia Dinica, and I have 2 questions. First would be, how much time do we have and how much time do we need to see a change at the level of the society? And how can we have small victories along the way? Because nobody likes to lose, nobody likes to be defeated, and my opinion is right now that we kind of feel that we lost the battle in a way. And it can be burdening, and it can be challenging, and we may end up, each of us in our own corners and, kind of sheltering in our little world just because we don't think we can reach out. And the second question is, who is going to drive the change? Because we have the parents, we have the teachers, some of us are parents and teachers in the same time, and we have the principals, and we have all the other actors that shape the education system. And we also tend to look at the winners. We tend to send prizes to the ones who are, victorious. And then we tend to polarize very much this education system that's not perfect. It's not ours, and it's not perfect in other countries too. So how can we, change the game, the rules of the game in such a way that we're not going to end up rewarding more and more the one that are, already have the first prize and they're winners, and go away from this savior model and, take all the others with us in a game that can shape the society in a good way. Thank you.
Very shortly, in terms of time, we need to be patient, and you can see a change in 15, 20 years. I mean, you need the whole generation to go through the school. Sorry to disappoint, but that's the truth.
No shortcuts.
No. Well, now, however, we may have, but I wouldn't say shortcuts. We may have this kind of systemic intervention, and for this you have to wait, or you may have punctual things. And for punctual things, you can piloting in several schools or high schools or whatever. And what I would do there is to encourage debates, not just circle of debates, but debates when teaching, Debating is crucial. Debating is part of our critical thinking life. And in this case, you will establish islands of normality, islands of critical thinking, and you can expand them such that to form a continent at the end of the day. And it was the second question. I'm old and I... Here is the trap, because you...
Who's leading the
Exactly,
revolution?
because I think from the bottom of my heart, whenever we think about education, we are not thinking about champions. We are not designing a whole system of education for the few. The system of education should be for all of us. And that means that either we together we are going to win, or all of us will be losers as a society.
From the Finnish point of view, I think that the first one, like my friend Sorin said, that these changes need time and that kind of work which continues, and let's say that we are not changing our objectives or goals after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Let's say that we have had almost the same goal around 55 years, and we have tried to somehow follow a little bit same line. But I think that I have quite many often said, because this question has been given here in Romania quite often, that this about the change, that if you look the Finnish education and the Finnish society in the 1970s, when we make the big change in the education, in same time we make the big changes in social security, health security, women's position in the working life. So there was a lot of that kind of things which support actually the education be successful. So education is the one driver, but there must be some other drivers in the society which helps education to be successful. And that's a very tricky question, because to make this other part of the society successful, you need to educate people. So that's why the education is very crucial. But if you leave the education as a one and only which can make the change, then I think that it will be really challenging and tricky for the educators.
Thank you very much. We have one more question here.
Thank you. My name is Mihaela Lungu. I'm a school counselor, and I have wrote down my question because I'm old too, so I thought I'm going to forget it. I would like the guests to think about the concept of the optimal frustration for development, and to try to answer how do we support critical thinking by addressing what the kids needs and by addressing what the kids want.
Thank you, Mihaela. That's the reason I spent the rest of the morning with her, that he make this kind of difficult question. Okay, I think that partly both. I think it's not that kind of question that what they want, what they need, that actually we say that it's a something, that the other one is maybe the more important. So if I think about my own time in the school, what was almost 25 years, we did it quite a lot of things which actually the students want to do, giving them the freedom, giving them the opportunities, giving them this kind of things which not actually included the school policy if we look generally what is the national curriculum or whatsoever. And then, of course, on the opposite, there was also the things what we must do, and we did it because we think about it that that's what they needed. So it was I think it was both way. But somehow, what was important, that we, in the middle of these two actions, if you think about it that way, we somehow try to listen to students also in the middle and understand his or her point of view about this question, and somehow respect about his or her idea about the school and education. And I think that's very important matter, because it's giving the student that kind of feeling that, okay, I'm a valuable member of the school community. I'm not just here as a customer. And I think this, somehow I find myself always in the values that somehow they must be really visible there And maybe they are also the one part of this kind of critical mindset what you can have when you have also values what you carried.
My response would be, Mihaela, why do we get the hardest question at the end? You know, this subtle distinction between what do or others need and want is crucial. And in order to exemplify it is, sometimes we are telling to our children as parents or professors, you may want that, but you don't need it. And what's the rationale behind that is that education has also a normativity, constraint. I mean, we are projecting something over our children. And that's the need part, because we think and we would like to make them want what they need, right? Sometimes they don't want that. For instance, you need to be fed, but sometimes the child doesn't want to eat. That's the difference between them. But is what's here crucial, of course, that we are taking a direction as parents and teachers. But in order to be successful, the child shouldn't feel that it's an imposure on it. You have to explain it. Okay, you may want it, but it's not good or bad. It may affect you in this way. And when you are reaching this metacognitive level of understanding, I'm pretty sure that she or he will follow the need you are projecting there, right? Because we have all kinds of wants. We will to do all kinds of things. But I think what we have to explain here is that we have to reach these targets together, and therefore your needs are these, and if I am mistaken, please explain me where I am mistaken, right? So,
actually, it's not a question, it's an intervention, but is related to critical thinking, to change in Romania, and also to the Danish system, comparing with our system. When I was in
30 seconds.
Okay, when I was a student in '99, I received a scholarship in Aalborg, and I discovered there that I don't know how to learn, because the system in Romania taught me that for 16 years that I have to reproduce what the teacher taught me to. And in Denmark, when I had an exam in university, I received all the materials, I received the question, all the materials, and 20 minutes. And in front of the teachers, I didn't know what to say, because I was supposed to summarize the biography, not what the teacher taught me to. So, 25 years passed, and we, as Romanian system, are in the same.
Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
I will take up, because it's also a publicity moment for us.
Thank you.
This is the reason why we created a training course which is called Teach Them How to Teach Them for Teachers, because we are still not taught as teachers in the pedagogical training, in the initial training, how to produce learning in our children. So, yes, it's about learning and critical thinking, and I will let you answer as well. I just stepped out of my role a bit.
Quick answer would be, you know, one of the most effective way to learn something is to teach that something. So make your students professors. Put them in the position to teach to the others that thing. And yes, and I said that, we are trapped in the same paradigm. And that's a disaster. From my perspective, that's a total disaster. If we don't change that, we'll end producing what we imbeciles what we are doing now, because repeating information is not learning.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the one of the most difficult thing in the teaching profession is to make the questions. And then if you don't get the answer, then you make a little bit different question, not giving the answer. So I think that this, how you make the questions is something what you really must learn to do. And then you must have this kind of, let's say, resistance that silence is not meaning that nothing happening there in the classroom. You're just giving a little bit different angle, and then they think about it once again. So I think that these things are some essential competencies of each of the teachers to somehow realize that, okay, sometimes it's like this.
Thank you very much for the question part, because I think all of these 2 hours, more than 2 hours, have left us with a lot of questions, and this is also the role of critical thinking. And we have a very, very powerful organ. Let's use it. We promised you'll have fun at the beginning of this debate. I hope you did have fun on the inside more than on the outside, because as you all know, we are on the verge of disaster, and everything will fall apart, just like for many other generations before us, who luckily managed to live a fulfilled life. And I think that it's up to every single one of us to be the critical thinkers that we want to see in society, and to be a model, not only for our children, but for our families and for our friends, and do what we preach. Because we are often not doing what we are preaching. And I appreciate very much my 2 colleagues who are actually doing what they are preaching. Thank you for today, and for all the other days when you made me think. And let's continue to do that in the future, and enjoy the Nordic Festival. Thank you,
Thank you.
Finland.
Thank you.
Thank you.